And on my end. All right, nervousness, go away, because we've been doing this too long to stay nervous, but it's what it is.
it's nervous because you care about it, right? I think important things, job interviews never stop being, nerve-wracking and stuff. It's not a bad thing.
All right, and welcome everyone to another episode of Hawaii's #1 podcast, the Kasanova Podcast. I'm your host, Mekel Kasanova, and I have the true honor and privilege of having the one, the only DyllonKG. Man, how's it going, man?
It's going. Honestly, my days are blurring together. I mean, like within quarantine, everybody's days are blurring together, but with like all the work I'm putting in so many spots, it's just it's work, sleep, work, keep going. So yeah, but glad to be alive. So that like no matter what I'm doing, glad that I'm still here. Yeah.
Definitely. And yeah, man, go ahead and tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. It's so you can actually find me on Twitch. Twitch is like my home. I stream like 4 days a week on Twitch. And Twitter, at DyllonKG, DyllonKG. I know my name's spelled according to Microsoft Word, my name is spelled wrong still. So I do make music on Spotify. I only have 2 singles out now, and I'll have an EP out in about July. So in about 6 weeks, July 1st. So, but you can find that at, you go to Spotify, just type in Niesh, Niesh. I'm the only artist with that name. And of course, if you go to Instagram, you can find me at Niesh Music. So again, my branding is an absolute nightmare. It's a work in progress. Yeah. So we're getting there, but yeah, that's where I am currently.
Cool. So definitely you're a music artist, you're a content creator, you are also a streamer on Twitch, but that's the other thing too is you're a mental health advocate as well. Like,
yeah. So that's probably the biggest part of all of it, right? Like if we were to have like a chart, and then from mental health advocate, stems down all these little subsections of like who I am. Yeah, it all stems from the want to destigmatize conversation and to be vulnerable in a world that I think still does not feel comfortable to be like comfortable enough to be vulnerable in. So yeah, that's my biggest passion over anything. The music is like, it's hip hop, it's heavily inspired by a lot of like wonderful artists, but it's got a lot of lyrics that hit what I feel like hit close to home for me, and from what listeners have said, hit really close to home for them. And same on Twitch, when we stream, we try to foster that sort of community environment where I'm obviously not a therapist, but if somebody pops in and they're like, hey man, like I'm just having a bad day, can I talk to some friends? They can get it off their chest, and we have resources if they're in a bad spot, crisis text lines and stuff. So yeah, no matter, I feel like all I do is kind of around that mental health advocate passion. Yeah.
Okay. Definitely. And I love the fact that you're speaking about how you are with your community, because I found that especially as a content creator, having a community is absolutely essential. And especially a community where you're fostering like that level of closeness and openness, because I've been in some people's streams, especially I'm still newer to Twitch than I am to YouTube. I've been on YouTube a lot longer as a platform and streaming. I'm not there now because apparently anytime I breathe in YouTube, I'm live on YouTube. YouTube's like, oh, this guy is breathing. He's alive. No, he's demonetized.
Yeah. I feel that.
But like, I've been on streams and in communities with other creators where it's almost like a cult of personality. So it's really refreshing, to hear how you are with your community. And it's one of the things like I try to foster with mine as well. Like anyone's having a bad day, if anyone needs to speak about anything, like be open. I'm here. I'm available. Sometimes, like I'm not always able to get to them because of clearly time zone difference. Like you and I, we have like a 5-6 hour time zone difference.
Yeah, it's pretty hefty, right? Yeah, I mean, you live in a spot that's hard to coordinate with a lot of people, almost everybody else, unless they live where you are. Yeah, so
But yeah, man, like what was the we're going to be jumping around topics today, but what was the core foundation for you with how you want to build and foster your community?
Man, I've been making content since I was like 16 in like some form or another. It's like, the long story short is, you know, I was a skateboarder growing up. I lived in this rural backwater red state country town, right? Cornfields and but somehow I got into skateboarding, luckily. And so I started like I bought cameras and started making videos and like skate videos and, you know, just really getting into it. And I loved that. So I got really addicted to making content, like just like really working on something and putting it out there for people. But what I found really early on when making YouTube, because that channel, I was like 16, it got like 5,000 subscribers on it. And that's not bad at all for like a kid who has no idea what he's doing. You know, he's not optimizing his SEO or anything. But I really loved, because there was a lot of vlogging that I did. There was a lot of behind the scenes, like if I went to a spot to go skate and try to get this trick on film and it didn't work out, there was a lot of like vulnerability that I put out there that a lot of people actually ended up clinging to, specifically a lot of like kids that were around my age or like younger than me. So fast forward a ton, you know, I tried a bunch of different YouTube channels, and I'm 25, you know, when I started Twitch, I was 24. So I'd done a bunch of YouTube stuff with skateboarding. I actually did a bunch of YouTube stuff with video games and Let's Plays, and the Let's Plays weren't as vulnerable. They were literally just me and a buddy on a couch playing games, and we did that for a few years and it didn't go anywhere. And so we ended up sort of, you know, at some point, my buddy who was working with me, he ended up kind of deciding like, you know what, I'm gonna go back to school. Like, YouTube has been fun. I love that we do this, but it's a grind and it's not going anywhere, because we weren't, you know, we started a new channel and it was you know, 500 subscribers. It was kind of nothing over 2 years. So I was like, okay, I guess I do Twitch. And you know, I remember telling myself that Twitch wasn't, I was like, Twitch live content isn't something people want. People love YouTube, you know. It's a weird, like, looking back. But I remember, because I worked with him on our Let's Plays, the vulnerability piece was missing. Like, we were putting on a show and joking and laughing, but there was no, like, it didn't feel like it had depth to it. So when I started live streaming, I went back to being that, like, just me. Because for me, you know, I have a few mental health disorders and I just need to be a human, and I'm a people person. And connecting with people, people say that, my partner says that a lot of people say that I connect with people really, really quickly, sort of in that way. So as I started streaming and getting into it, I started growing rather quickly. Within like 2 years, I ended up becoming partnered on Twitch. But there was a turning point where, like, there was so much pressure on me as a broadcaster. I was putting pressure on myself, because, you know, numbers fluctuate and you start to ask yourself, like, do people like me? You know, are people getting sick of this? And I kind of started turning into a toxic streamer, where I was like so worried about view count and this and that. And one day I broke down to my community and I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know. The anxiety of, like, do people like me or not? Am I doing this right? Is, like, cracking me. And since then, which is about 2 years ago, I mean, give or take, I don't remember that specific date, but we started working towards being, like, truly vulnerable. And if I'm having a rough day, talking it out, you know, because I was a people person and I was hanging out with people, but this is the turning point for me where I started, like, venting my own stuff out live and being like, I feel worthless today. I feel like crap today. I don't, you know. And the more I did that, the more people were like, oh my God, like, that's totally me. Like, that's exactly how I feel. And so as we started doing that, we started figuring out, and this is where the cancellation came in, obviously we could talk about later, but we started figuring out the nuances of, like, how can you discuss mental illness in ways that are not destructive, but are, you know, where you're not putting yourself up as a therapist or counselor, but people feel comfortable and heard and understood. And that's kind of, I mean, that's how we got to where we are today, ultimately, is just that growth and evolution of like, how can we keep this conversation happening? Because not only was it cathartic for me, it was great for them. And, you know, I needed it. I still, in a lot of ways, I'm in therapy now, but still talking about my stuff online to people who get it is a different experience than my therapy 100%. So, but that's kind of how we got to where we are, is just from back then, knowing that like vulnerability was something that was like a superpower of mine. And then figuring out how we got it to where we are. Yeah. Long story, but yeah.
No, I mean, dude, we have no filter, no censor here on the show. Like if there's anything like if there's more depth to it, like definitely do not feel at all pressured. Yeah. You have to censor yourself or cut yourself down at all. Cause
thank you.
I think, you and I, we were talking about this before we went live, but you know, there is this stigma when it comes to mental health and when it comes to anxiety and depression. And it's like, it's a conversation that so many people are uncomfortable having. Right. And in my opinion, I'm like, we need to break that down. You know, like me, I have anxiety, I have depression. You know, you saw the post I put up a couple of days ago where I was talking about how, you know, because with this show, like I deal with like, you know, I interview a lot of content creators, a lot of celebrities, actors and whatnot, and different companies I've worked with. And I've been at that same point where you are, where it's like talking about the numbers, because you know, people who may not be content creators, you may not understand it. Like there's a lot of pressure on us, like especially, you know, trying to keep our numbers up, trying to, you know, especially if we're working with companies or we're sponsored, you know, it's a very much a grind. And it got to a point for me, you know, like with, and I'll be open about this, and I've been told that I shouldn't speak about it, but like, I did the interview for the main cast of Resident Evil 3 that just came out. So I interviewed them, and they, you know, the voice of Jill, the voice of Carlos, they came on my show. They acted super cool. You know, I got the first interviews with both of them before anyone else did. And then I noticed that because I didn't have the numbers, they didn't reshare or acknowledge that they were on my show. I had other voice actors from like Final Fantasy VII Remake that I've had one I'm really close with, the guy who voices Barrett, John Bentley. Really close guy, super good guy. But some of the other voice casts was like, you're not big enough. Like, you don't have the numbers for me to come on your show. You're like, yeah, you're not big enough. And then another company that I've worked with for years, they actually sent me to E3 last year. They decided that, you know, I don't have the numbers for them to continue to work with. They're like, you know, you're kind of a nobody. And that started to get to me. I'm like, I'm putting my heart and my soul into doing this and trying to work and help build up other content creators out here in Hawaii, because there is almost no scene here. And, you know, a lot of people here in Hawaii think that all we can do is, you know, try to be a next reggae artist or try to be a comedian. Like anything beyond Hawaii, they think is impossible because there's not that level of tangibility. And I'm like, there's so much we can do. You know, I've gotten the opportunity to go to University of Hawaii and speak to students and say, hey, this is possible. If you want to pursue it, have that passion. And, you know, I can mentor you. I can do this, I can do that and help you along your journey. But like, it's just one of those things where that started to get to me, like, you know, seeing that I'm a nobody, saying I don't have the numbers. And then I vocalized it in the video. And it's so funny because in the video I put out and in the text, because, you know, Twitter's 240 characters, I ended up saying like, yeah, I'm feeling down. This is why I'm feeling depressed. And at the same time, I'm still willing to move forward and not give up, nor should you. And somehow, some way, people, and a lot of people interpreted that as, oh, Mekel is just depressed, or is he suicidal, or he's gonna give up, or you know, it's all about the numbers. He should just drop this. He's a nobody. Like it's amazing how people interpret things.
Yeah. Yeah. The way that people, you know, knowing that there's a million different like perspectives to subtext, because everybody's trying to find the subtext. They read the words, but what's the deeper meaning, you know? And that's where people start getting caught. Yeah. I feel that the numbers are, I think the numbers are the hardest part, you know, because it's all fine and dandy for content creators to be like, you should do it for the love and the passion. And I do, but love and passion doesn't pay the bills. And I am somebody who does not like, I don't fit in with 9-to-5 jobs. Like I worked at Best Buy for a really long time, and then I worked IT for a really long time, and I loved both of those jobs.
You know, like, how IT is.
Yeah. I love those jobs, but like if that's my life, if I'm looking forward and going, I'm going to be at this job for the next 50 years, and I'm hoping and praying for weekends and vacation days, that's what I don't like, I'm good. Like I stepped out my front porch the other day to go check the mail, and I saw it was like 6 p.m. right? I checked my mail late, and I saw the neighbor, you know, he does a bunch of gardening for people. Like he runs this whole company for it. And I'm sure like he loves that, and that's like his passion, you know. But like I saw him like drenched in sweat, taking his boots off on his porch, and I was like, I don't want that life. Like I don't want to just like hope and pray for vacation days and scrape by to keep the roof over my head, you know, like and so I do love this, and I love it enough to make it my job, and that's why I'm willing to be here. But yeah, like the pressure of numbers for sponsorships to get people to talk to you. I've reached out to a lot of people before trying to get, you know, back when I did podcasts, trying to get people on podcasts. And, you know, unless you have a lot of great reference material, time of day is hard to get. And not only that, but there's this interaction amongst other people where, and people pretend this doesn't exist, but it does. It's the same as high school, right? Where like there's a popularity of like you got 20,000, 30,000 followers, or, you know, and so there are circles that you exist in as you sort of move up the echelon. And it's just, it is how it is. And so like being able to even like be seen as a peer to people requires, usually, not always, not every person's like this, but usually requires some form of metric to back that up. And that, you know, that's hard. You know, for me personally, I'm a Twitch partner. I used to have 150 viewers all the time when I was playing Warframe. That was like my main game, and that's all I played. I burnt out super hard, stopped playing it, dropped down to like, you know, 60 viewers, and we've hit the reset button on what we love to play and do several times. So we sit at like 45 average viewers. And I've had comments like, Twitch partner, 45 views. Why do you have a check mark, you know? And I don't feel like I fit in with other people that are Twitch partners that are bigger. And, you know, there's all this pressure. And is that exacerbated by mental health? Yeah. Like, obviously, if I didn't have, you know, my borderline personality, I probably wouldn't be as sensitive to the thoughts and feelings of others. But I think every human being is sensitive to the thoughts and feelings of others to some degree at some point. So, you know, it's easy to say that like the numbers shouldn't matter or whatever, but at the end of the day, like they do, especially, you know, if you aspire for more. And it's not about greed. You know, you could work at a job and want for a promotion, or like you could be grateful for your job. Like, oh man, I'm so lucky to have a job that pays my bills. But I want a promotion. I want to make more. I want to sustain my family better. I want to pay for nicer things, whatever it is, right? Like you can still be thankful and want for more. And I think sometimes, especially with like Twitter and YouTube, and we call it streamer Twitter and stuff like that, there's this idea that like you should just be thankful for what you have. And while like, yes, that is step one, be thankful for what you have, you know, don't dismiss what you have, but wanting more isn't bad. And yeah, wanting to get those metrics higher and expressing that you're struggling with like metrics, or, you know, because metrics, I don't know about you, but to me, if my metrics are low, sometimes I'm like, maybe it's because I'm not that great. Like maybe it's a reflection of me as a human. And so sometimes, you know, we should be more understanding about that stuff. Big rant about all of that. But I feel that probably every week I have some sort of self-doubt about metrics or numbers or this or that, or, you know, my latest single that came out has 500 plays. My first single has like 5,000 and got like 1,000 or so in the first day. Like, so like, I'm like, oh, is my music not as good anymore? Like, you know what I mean? Like there's always going to be that. I think that's part of it. I think it's kind of healthy to have, to be able to like, look at yourself and wonder like, okay, what's working, what's not working. But I think sometimes it gets destructive, and I don't know that we always just have like control over that. But
so. Yeah. No. I agree with you. Like, as far as like when it comes to the metrics of not hitting numbers, like what we'll use YouTube as an example. I used to, like a year ago, well, several months ago, let's say, to prior to that, I was averaging several thousand views a video, and then I wasn't able to stay consistent with it because at the time I was working full time. Like, I used to be a systems analyst for a hospital, and it's people think, oh, you should be grateful. You have a job in IT. It pays well. You're doing really good. And I'm like, I was absolutely miserable.
Right.
Miserable beyond words. Like, working, 17, 18 hours a day.
Right. Yeah. Especially at hospitals, man. Like, people, if stuff breaks at a hospital, they don't care who they have to yell at. They just yell at someone to fix it. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And it's like, people think, oh, you're in IT, so you're getting paid so well. I'm like, yeah, I do get paid well, but what's the trade-off? Like, the hours you're working, like, I'm married. I've been, my wife and I have been married for about 4 years now, but like the amount of time that we actually ever saw each other, hardly ever.
Right.
And it's like you one of the things for me, like I barely ever had time. Even if I was off, I was on call 24/7.
Right.
And I was always getting called in, like, over and over and over. And when I quit my job September last year, and after being with the company for like 7 years, I'm like, okay, I want to pursue podcasting, YouTube full time. So when I decided to go full time, and also do streaming full time, like it was okay. I was not generating the numbers that I was doing before, and for many months, I was just feeling like, oh, okay, I'm failing. I'm not really doing as well. I was having the up and downs just because I have anxiety and depression. Yep. And my wife is like, oh, you're doing fine. Just stick with it. Same thing with my viewers. Like, oh, stick with it. But then I'm looking at that metric, like, I'm not doing now what I was doing then. Yeah. And it's just messing with me mentally. And then,
I mean, the stress of like, I'm going to do this full time and pay my bills is just another like compound on top of like, I got to hit the numbers. I got to pay bills, like, especially when you have a partner, you have a wife, like, I got to contribute, or I'm not doing enough. And is it going to adversely affect my relationship now? And it's, it's easy for people to say, well, you should do this, and you should stay at your job until you got the numbers. But if you don't have a job that allows you to do that stuff consistently, like there's situations are always different. Yeah. There's always people kind of casting aspersions as to what you should do. But, and I didn't have it as bad as you, but I kind of went full time under a similar pretense, sort of, long hours, getting paid well. I was getting, my level of IT was actually a lot lower. So like we were, I worked for a company that we were contracted, so we didn't even like work with them, but we would VPN and fix machines and things like that, or just place tickets for the on-site team. But the pay was like fine. So I started making like enough money on Twitch to supplement my income, like 1-for-1 ish. And it had been like 3 months of making the same amount of money on Twitch. And I was like, yeah, okay. I hate my job. Like, I'm working from noon to 11 at night. I'm streaming from like 11:30 to 4 a.m. because that's the only time I can make it happen. So I was like literally losing sleep. And so I quit and went full time earlier than a lot of people would like recommend. But, and I've been blessed to be full time really since. But, obviously the money coming in has gone way down for me. So I feel the pressure. And, I've my partner, she makes way more money than me. And she's like, I want you home. I want you working on like your dreams. If you're going to go work at Target where I can't see you for 9 hours a day or whatever, or like working here, I'm cool with supporting us. Like, you pay what you can, and we will, figure that out. So, I'm lucky in that way, but the fear still of like, can I provide, like, am I doing enough? Or is she like kind of irritated because we're not making, you know what I mean? Like there's always the fear, and it happens. And yeah, I think they're, but I mean, if it's, everyone always says if it's your passion, you know, but it doesn't mean that we can't be terrified every step of the way and doubt our capabilities as like people. I think that's the hard thing. Yeah. So.
And it's interesting too, because a lot of people will tell you like, oh, you should take a break, you know, you should relax, you know, this and this. I'm like, no.
Taking a break don't help the numbers. They go down if you take a break. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like anytime I've been stressed about numbers, it's been easier to tackle everything with strategy as of lately. I used to kind of just panic and like scrape at stuff and figure out, okay, what can we, but now there's like a strategy. I know there's like, you know, kind of a build and things like that. But so, you know, it's gotten easier for me. It's a lot more now of like, okay, you know, I just started a YouTube channel. So like on my Twitch stream, obviously on top of the advocacy stuff, we play a game called Dead by Daylight. Like that's the main game that we play. And I like to teach the game and educate, and, you know, we're pretty chill. There's no salt or a lot of whining or anything like that. So just teach the game, educate. But I started making a YouTube channel, and I'm giving myself a full year, which is like a lot of time to work on the YouTube channel to see how that affects the stream and to reevaluate. And the YouTube channel in 26 days has like 112 subscribers, but one video has like 1,200 views, and then one video has like 500 views. And that's, you know, looking analytically, it's coming from like search, you know, like 90% from YouTube search. So we're hitting keywords really good in good spots. So, but, you know, so instead of like, because there's a lot of videos on my channel that have like 30 views, you know, that are not doing well. And so I'm looking at it going like, okay, like trying to learn the lessons where I can, instead of just like, yeah, like the advice of like, oh, take a break, de-stress. Like, well, that doesn't help. Taking a break adds to the stress. So I've put myself on a track where I'm giving myself like this whole period of time to like be methodical and calculated and reevaluate and have like backup plans to pivot to. And instead of like, yeah, and I know people don't mean harm when they're like, take a break, but no. Don't want to, especially, I mean, like I love streaming, you know, I love creating. I do, you know, like the stress is worth it, which is kind of a ridiculous thing to say, I feel like, but taking a break just makes me feel like, you know, like I'm wasting time anyway. So it's you know, not usually great advice, but
no, I mean, and it's one of those things like at most, and I'm assuming you may be this way as well. Like when it comes to taking a break, maybe a couple hours, maybe a day, but beyond that, it's like
sometimes, there are days where like it's usually our Mondays, but me and my partner, we both work. So like on Mondays, we do something on Mondays, but usually it's like, okay, I'm going to sit today and I'm going to play Final Fantasy VII Remake, not make content, not worry about making a song or, you know, composing any music for a track. Or those days don't happen as much as I'd like, but sometimes that is necessary to, you know, kind of reevaluate a situation. Because I think the forest for the trees type situations kind of happen where we're so frustrated by XYZ, we don't give ourselves that chance to like step back. So I think taking a day off is good advice. You know, I think a few hours or get off Twitter for a week or whatever, you know, I think sometimes that stuff is great if you find yourself comparing yourself to people or whatever. But you know, extended period breaks are just, you know, people that get to go on hiatuses are generally people that like have full-time jobs. Hiatuses though, like I took a hiatus last year after like the cancellation stuff, and it was a different scenario, but coming back after hiatus is like almost too anxiety inducing to ever want to do that again. So yeah, it's not something I ever want. I'll take my one day off a week gladly. So yeah.
Speaking of the cancellation, would you mind like sharing like what like what were the parameters of that? Like what brought it on, and how have you been able to not only cope but to work through it?
So it started last year, like summertime, I think ish, or probably a little earlier, probably like April, May. But we were doing basically our streams had turned into just chatting streams where we would all just have great conversations about mental illness or about how we're feeling, or we would sometimes like look at articles about, you know, different mental illness discoveries and things like that. And I was like, how do I do more for the community? So I started this idea of running it through Patreon, but I didn't want it to be like counseling or therapy. I was like, okay, I'll have a Patreon thing where we can like almost like run like an AA meeting or something like that, of people that just like get up, share their experience and talk about stuff and then like disperse, you know? And it was going to be a paid thing, which in hindsight is why people were upset, right? Because AA is not something that I think you pay for. But so there were some things in there that I was like, well, if I'm going to put my time into like organizing and designing this, then, you know, like it wasn't outrageous expensive or anything. But people were frustrated about that because they were like, well, you can't charge people, like you're not a therapist, right? And if you're charging people to talk about their mental illness, you're really getting into a gray area. And I was like, you are correct. So we didn't do the idea and we just kind of left it. We came back later and I thought really long and hard about being a life coach. And so for a while I was dabbling with the idea of life coaching. In some states, in the United States, life coaching requires a license. In some states it doesn't. It's really like a huge gray analogous area. So I was like, I will like kind of throw my hat into the ring here. And there were like some plans to do like a Patreon life coach thing. And it wasn't designed to talk about mental illness. I pivoted because I understood like the intricacies of what could happen, you know, legally to somebody. So, you know, I looked at life coaching and I was like, life coaching is about the now, you know, your goals and holding you accountable for your goals. You know, where do you want to be? Do you want to apply for more jobs, or do you want to feel more motivated or start exercising or reading books, whatever it is, you know, like, okay, well, let me help you accountable, encourage you and push you forward and give you tools to do that. It wasn't about anxiety, depression necessarily, even though I understand that those things might intrinsically be a part of how somebody does move forward in their life. It wasn't so much about curing the past, but just moving forward for the future. So I started kind of like getting into this a little bit. And so we started talking on stream a lot about this idea, and somebody in our broadcast, I actually still remember their username. I haven't seen them in a while, but they were talking about like, I just can't get myself out of bed. You know, like my depression is, so heavy that I don't get out of bed. I can't do it. And so we talked about it a little bit and I was like, I think, you know, it's okay to be gentle with yourself and give yourself, you know, patience and time. If you're having a rough day, it's okay to like chill in bed for a little bit. I proceeded to say, you know, for me personally, I have to be tough. You know, I got to get tough with myself sometimes, because if I allow myself, I will stay in bed for days. You know, I just won't do anything. So there's a moment where I have to be like, all right, get up, get it done, you know? So, but I was like, sometimes you got to be like tough on yourself. You know, you don't choose depression, but you choose your behaviors, right? So you may feel like garbage, but I think it's really important that we don't like wait for this magic gust of inspiration or motivation, but we at least get up, shower, get up, do the dishes. You don't have to like revolutionize your day today, but try to do something, you know, because the depression's not the thing that keeps us in the bed, you know. We keep us in the bed. The depression is just the kind of root cause, I guess. And I still very strongly believe this. You know, I have borderline personality, which is like a really complex mental disorder, but it's a behavioral issue. It's a personality disorder. So it's something that is like treatable and curable with enough time. And so like one thing I've really learned about a lot of this stuff is like, I know that like we feel symptoms and we may not feel motivated to do stuff, but we still can do minimums. We still can make it through. Obviously there are some nuanced situations where maybe that's not so possible, but regardless, somebody was in my stream that didn't like this sort of tough love advice of like, you know, you still can choose to get up. You still can like, you know, like, oh, I feel like garbage. I don't want to, but I'm going to like go shower, you know? So they tweeted out, this person tweeted out, and they're a broadcaster. They're actually somebody that like I had hugged at several events. We were very close, but they tweeted out that they were terrified, something to the effect of terrified of the idea of people talking about mental illness on Twitch, because bad advice could get someone hurt. And they proceeded to, through their own lens, filter what I had said to be a vast misinterpretation. They portrayed through a few different tweets, kind of portrayed the idea that I was selling myself as a therapist, that I was telling people that they can choose depression or not choose depression. And they, I at the time was writing an ebook about my experience with mental illness and things that I had learned. And that ebook is finished, but I don't talk about it because I was canceled right as it came out. But at one point I was like, I go further into this in my book. Hey, buy it. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You know, I said that on my stream. I was like, hey, you know, if you guys want to pre-order, but they were like, they saw that as like a scummy, grimy thing to do. Right. Like I had some secret cure in the book that I was withholding and wanting people to pay me for. So, it was one of those things, you know, like if there's a canvas for painting and somebody paints all the silhouette space around something, but so they paint the entire background, but they don't paint the subject. You can still see the silhouette of the subject, right? So like if somebody paints all around an apple, you could tell like, okay, that's still an apple though, even though they didn't paint it in. So he never tagged me or added me or retweeted me or even clipped it. But the way everything was described as like this person talking about mental illness, writing a book, people quickly started realizing it was me that they were talking about. And I saw these tweets while I was live. So I kind of started getting attacked for it. I had people in my DMs telling me that I was, a POS, that I was going to get people killed. I had somebody tell me that I was going to get people killed and that their blood would be on my hands. There were other broadcasters, very prominent broadcasters, that DM'd my partner and were like, I used to support you and believe in you, but both of y'all are just really scummy and grimy now.
Serious?
I had friends that I'd hung out with the prior year at or was it the same year at PAX East? And we had each other's phone numbers. They suddenly blocked me on Twitter with no conversation or rhyme or reason. I ended up texting one of them and going like, really? Like in a block? Like I have your number.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of people quickly just wrote me off based on the tweet. They could infer that it was about me. And they were like, yep, he's grimy and just money hungry and he's going to get people hurt. And it was really hard for me as somebody who struggled with suicide as like a 16-year-old, as somebody who tells my story as a means to like empower others to feel comfortable in their skin, to be told that you're going to get kids killed or that you don't care about anybody and that you're just going for money or any of this stuff. It was a lot. And their tweet ended up blowing up to a couple thousand retweets, if I'm not mistaken, but I believe it's somewhere around maybe 10,000 likes and hundreds and hundreds of comments and people retweeting it. And seeing that people were retweeting this and saying like, oh my God, whoever did this is a garbage human being. And even if they didn't know me, when that pressure starts to weigh on you of like, there's thousands of people that hate me, like,
yeah,
and so I just quit streaming. I just went under a rock, having friends kind of that you thought were friends bail out on you and block you, want nothing to do with you. Like I get if they were like, hey, what happened here? Like, is this the full story? What did you do? Like, but nobody asked my opinion. Nobody cared about my opinion. They didn't respect me enough to go like, hey, what is this? They just went, wow, he's the worst. It was irrelevant who I was, who they knew me as. They went with a tweet, a singular moment, an instance, and decided that was who I was as a person. And I struggled with suicide really hard following that event. I believe that was like July of last year. And so August, September, October went by, and I just wasn't streaming. I literally went part-time, worked at Target for a while. Like I was just like, I was literally canceled in terms of like, if I wasn't going to be dead, well, I didn't want to be online anymore. And it was difficult. So coming back, I decided to come back in January. I was seasonal at Target. And so in January, they're like, yeah, we don't need you so much anymore. And I decided I wanted to come back because I didn't want to be defeated. And I decided that what I wanted to do with my life and what I wanted to talk about, people can rally against it and rail against it as much as they want. And I still think that people are wrong to say that, because the general consensus on Twitter is that mental health is important until it's not, you know?
Yeah.
People get on there and tweet and they say like, oh, I need a mental health day for myself. And everyone goes, oh my gosh, take care of your mental health. It's so important. But, you know, having conversations with other people like, hey man, how's your head doing? You know, how are you feeling today? Which is literally how my streams go. You know, like I'm never sitting up there like, you should really do this. You know, it's mental health is important to people on a surface level. And when you really want to start to make change in it or be a part of it, it's everybody points their finger and they go get help, go to therapy, go to counseling. It's almost this like turning people away. But the biggest thing a lot of people don't realize is that insurance is not covered, or is not covering therapy. Like most of the time it doesn't. Yeah. You might get a few sessions a year. If you're lucky, you get put on a wait list. And medication doesn't cure trauma. You know, like for me, my mental illness is purely trauma based as a kid, you know? So they could put me on as much Prozac as they want, but I'm not getting better. I'm just feeling happier and the lows are lower than they used to be, you know? Yeah. So it's so much more complex than that. And, you know, I'm not saying that friendship and community can cure mental illness, but having people that are around you that are telling you it's okay to feel the way you're feeling, you can live another day. Like, why don't we have more of that? And the fact that people rail against it because of the idea that talking about mental illness is a problem. There's this really interesting I don't know, it's just an idea, I guess, a misconception that if you talk to somebody while they're suicidal, you could give them the wrong advice and they will do it. But statistically speaking, based on a lot of case studies, that has like never been the case. That's never, ever, like, you know, movies fantasize it as like somebody's about to jump off the roof and somebody goes to talk to them and they do it anyway. But like that doesn't happen often. Right. And I'm not saying I talk to people when they're really suicidal because, you know, that's a lot of pressure. We have crisis text line commands in our chat and stuff like that. But I am saying, like, when people are feeling low, just to talk to them and say, hey, I've felt low before too. You know, I've felt low enough to try to kill myself, and here I am, and it is worth it. And it may not feel like it's worth it to say that, just to be a human to somebody. Like, it's not that hard. And you don't need like some sort of fancy degree to be a person connecting to a person. Now, to like treat somebody and to like help them maneuver the tough parts of their life, that's a therapist, that's a counselor. Yeah. But to be a friend and say, hey man, like I feel you, like I'm there. That, you know, and I will always rally against this idea that we have to, you know, like we just point people in the other direction and tell them to go get help somewhere else. And, you know, so from the cancellation and all that, I still struggle. I don't know who's my friend and who's not my friend. When I talk to people on Twitter, I see popular streamers talking about something. I'm like, do they think of me based off that tweet? Do they even know that tweet happened? Do they know that tweet was about me? I don't know, you know, so I'm always like, are people side-eyeing me? And there's a ton of like bigger, not really bigger, they're bigger in their area of Twitch, but there's a lot of people that don't like me anymore. They side-eye the hell out of me. And that, you know, those people I'm not too worried about anymore. If you never took the time to get to know me, that's not my problem. I don't care no more. But to the people that I'm unsure of, or friends I had, you know, it's scary to try to figure out who still likes you and who doesn't without being like, hey, so I was canceled last year. Did you hear about that? Like, you know, you don't want to talk about it like that. So you got to figure out who likes you, who doesn't like you, you know, who talks with you. And it's been hard. You know, anytime I make new friends, I always have to think like, what if they found out about that, you know, or when's that going to come back around? So it's been hard. Like I said, I went back to therapy for it. You asked, you know, what the coping with it, and I disappeared for a while. There was a moment where I was like figuring out if you can make a noose out of towels in the bathroom, you know, and that's not like a extra thing. That's just, you know, my partner can attest to that. You know, when you have disorders, I'm not saying that like that's an excuse, but you get to a darker spot a lot faster. You know, and I've talked to Gothics about it, and she went through a lot of that same stuff and went to therapy. And, you know, my therapist was, I've actually had 3 therapists in that time. You know, it's been really helpful. And I've learned a lot about myself in the process. And at this point, I feel like there's almost nothing anybody could say that hasn't already been said. So in a weird way, there's like a strength in that, but it's, coping is hard. It's an everyday thing. You know, if I see people disagreeing with me on Twitter, I'm always like, oh, like I will literally like, all right, is this going to happen again? You know? So I try not to say anything that's incredibly controversial. I try not to have opinions on things anymore, because when's it going to slap me in the face? You know? So my Twitter is now mostly just me hyping people up and trying to encourage others. Cause the minute you have an opinion on something, I don't, I'm working up to not giving a damn about what anybody thinks, but it's not easy, you know, but I'm not that person. I'll be a little bit.
Yeah. It's, I'm frustrated that you went through that. You know, I'm a very, very empathic person, and to hear
the look on your face was like just yeah,
you know. I'm like,
yeah. I mean, like, before, not to like cut you off, but like my quick thing is just, I don't even hate anybody. Like, coming out of that, I don't have any ill will towards the people that perpetrated those things against me, knowingly or otherwise. The people that have me blocked, I don't even hate them. You know, I still support them as human beings, because my biggest thing is that even if somebody thought I was Satan in that moment that tweet went out, people can grow from mistakes and change, but you have to be willing to allow them that. You have to afford them that, right? Like, you don't, if you want to see that they can change, right? Like, if you think nobody can change, whatever, they don't deserve it, fine. But I think people can change, right? And so even if people thought I was that bad person, I would, you know, I'm very much, I've learned a lot from those, from those moments, and like how to phrase things and stuff. But also, like, I have to afford people that ability that I want afforded for me. So if anybody ever hears this in passing, I don't hate any of the people that did that stuff, because my hating them for that stuff doesn't make me any better than them hating me for a, you know, out of context tweet. So
No, and it's again, I'm still trying to.
You're right.
It's one of those situations where, you know, my frustration with cancel culture, you know, seeing how it's affected you. You know, we have a mutual friend in Gothics, and seeing what she went through, you know, and
almost at the exact same time.
Yeah. And it's like, I've said this before, and I've gotten in hot water for saying it, but people are okay with canceling someone until it's them being canceled.
That's exactly what it is. Everyone is fine throwing somebody under the bus for their social media clout to prove that their opinion or belief is better until it happens to them. And then they go, ooh, oh no, you know, it's, you won't see me talking about anyone that gets, like, when Bad Bunny or whatever was talking about people subbing to her, I was like, I don't care. Not my community. Doesn't affect me. She can live her life. For all I know, this is something taken out of context. Like, I have new eyes to all of these situations because I'm like, my opinion on any of this doesn't matter. Like with Alinity, like getting banned or not getting banned again. Like I was like, I don't care. And somebody's like, but what about the rules, man? Like, I don't care. None of these rules, like none of it applies to me. I don't care. If something happens to me, then I'll care. But whatever happens to her, I'm not going to throw her under the bus. And it sucks because like her name was the one trending, not Twitch. You know, like people should be adding Twitch, being like, yo, Twitch, what up? Like, what are you guys doing? But no, people were coming after her. And it's just, people have, I don't want to say people have too much power, because I think social media is a beautiful thing to be able to allow it's a vehicle for expression. But I think at the same time, people want to be right, or people want to feel like they're part of a movement. And oftentimes the easiest movement to jump on is hatred and cancellation. You know, people say something you don't agree. Like, people don't have to agree, but it's not your job to like bully them, you know, or whatever. I don't. Anyway, it's a lot.
It you know, and I'll share my story with you. You know, I shared it with your partner, and I've shared it with Gothics. I'm very open about this. My first social media or content creator cancellation for me came by virtue of having an opinion on Twitter. You know, there was a popular Nintendo YouTuber, you know, who had one of his, I was part of his community, and I was still up and coming about, you know, a year and a half, 2 years ago. And, you know, one of his community members asked me what I thought. And this is how silly it is in the grand scheme of it. But, you know, asked me do you think Smash Brothers started off as a fighting game? And I said, no, I don't think it originally started off as that. And then the bigger YouTuber decided that he wanted to debate me. He said, come on my show, I'm going to debate you and prove you how wrong you are. And I'm like, dude, why do you need to debate me on my own opinion? You know, it's not that serious. And because I wouldn't go on the show, you know, I had, you know, his community, and they kept DMing me and tagging me and tweeting me saying, oh, you're just being a pussy, you're scared to go on the show, this is that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm at work. I can't
even do my job without y'all in my DMs right now.
Yeah, and I'm like, I can't, you know, and then it just kept going to, you know, and I logged off of Twitter. I was like, you know, I'm not going to deal with this. And then, like I said, it got to the point where it kept going and going and going, to where, you know, my wife, my sister, sisters, plural, sisters, and my cousins and other family members started getting death and rape threats. And I'm all the way out here in Hawaii, and some of that guy's communities out here. And when it got to the point where people were, it got so bad that on top of the death and rape threats, we got doxxed. People were sending pictures of my wife around, sharing her information. And it got to a point where, you know, I lashed out at the creator because I thought I was cool with him. I thought we were friends. And it's like, in these type of situations, you kind of, situations, as my mother always used to tell me, situations expose people's character and who they really are. And in that situation, when I lashed out at him, I reached out to him, I'm like, dude, tell your community to stop. This is not that serious. I mean, you know, they're going after my wife, my family, my siblings. And, you know, he just kept encouraging it because to him, oh, I'm not in control of what they're doing. I'm like, yeah, but you're liking all their tweets and their stuff that they're doing where they're tagging and attacking me and my family. Like, it's okay. And then when it got to the point where someone popped up in my wife's job, that's
terrifying. I don't know what I would even do.
Yeah, it got to a point where, like, I held on to that. You know, I got canceled. A lot of the Nintendo or gaming community on YouTube decided that you know, because he canceled me, you know, they're going to dogpile in with it. So, you know, I was constantly, in any video I would put up, any tweet I would put up, I was being harassed and attacked, and it just got to a point where it's like who I was, my brand, everything died. So I stepped away from content creation. I just focused on, life out, IRL. And it's something that's stuck with me. And I've gotten to a point, like, I'm very sensitive to that kind of stuff, like the harassment and putting down, because I come from a broken family. I come from growing up where there's a lot of abuse and stuff like that. So like, that was triggers for me. I've got a lot of stuff that I've been through. Yeah. And at that time, I was still going through, and I still am. I'm 4 years in remission now, but I was 2 years in remission from colorectal cancer. Oof. And it got to the point where people were telling me I hope you die from cancer. This you're scum of the earth, and I'm like, over Smash Brothers, and then like I I'm just laughing. I'm like, wait, over that, and I've been open to, one of the other things like I've gone through, I had a daughter, past tense. I had a daughter about 12, 13 years ago. She passed away from sudden infant death syndrome. Oh, and sorry. One of the things that I've been open about dealing with that, dealing with sudden infant death syndrome, and losing a child young, and with women going through postpartum depression because my partner at the time went through it, and how it's important to, be there for the women to go through, be there for the fathers, and how important mental health is overall. And I was having people that took this shit so seriously. They're like, oh, it's good that your daughter died. She didn't have to grow up with a loser like you that's saying Smash, and like, oh, we're Smash Brothers. Like, it's just.
Yeah, I totally get it. It's a joke to so many people. A power play, I don't know, but that's my issue. 100% is like, because I've had people tell me like, oh, you should have killed yourself, way back when, and so this idea that it's something that sadly like is the most adequately named thing on the internet, I think, in terms of when people do it. No, they're and I think sometimes it's not even just cancellation of like, we don't want your career to move forward, because it used to be a term used for YouTubers that were like doing really bad things or whatever, exploiting people, but now it's like, if you have an opinion I don't like, we're going to make sure your career ends. We're going to make and I think sometimes people don't go into it with the idea of like, I'm going to make sure your career ends. But it like, people take it further now, your life canceled, like your whatever, and I don't know. It's about being right. It's about being seen as a hero in the eyes of social media. If you have feedback for something, like in my case, if somebody came to me and was like, hey, I don't like how you're talking about mental health, and DMs, I'd be like, yeah, let's talk about it. But it wasn't about feedback, which is what a lot of people, what this particular person was like saying. They were like, it's about feedback. I didn't like what you're doing. No, you posted it publicly for the world to see without tagging me. That's not feedback. You wanted to rally the troops. You wanted to spark a conversation. You wanted to respond to every comment. You don't go to work like, nobody feels good, right? Like when you're at your job and your boss calls you out and they say, hey, you really messed up yesterday, and everybody's job was harder because of you, and we're probably gonna have to fire you in the next few days, but we'll find out. Like, that's not feedback. What are you talking about? You're like chastising me publicly, right? So social media cancellation has gone about it's gone from like exposing people that are doing genuinely terrible things, which I think even that is like risky business, because this whole social media being judge, jury, executioner is not our job.
Yeah.
But I think that it's gone from people that maybe need to be made aware of, like, oh, watch out, he's kind of doing this, or it's now like, if you do something in a way that I don't like, then it's game over. And being angry or being outraged at somebody else is just the easiest thing to dogpile onto. And I'll be honest, I've probably like jumped onto dog piles in the past, and I probably like retweeted and gave my opinion, but I don't need people to validate whether like the way that I think about something is right. So with Bad Bunny or Alinity or whatever happens, I don't care if people think that like I have like a higher morality than them. I don't need to tweet about it or talk about it. I know what I think. That's it. Done.
Yeah.
So in regards to like, people telling you stuff about, your daughter, or even like you, like your wife, like it feels like it's going further and further regularly. And I would not be surprised if we actually get a few fatalities out of this in the next few years. It's mental health is still such a joke to the internet community. I mean, I strongly believe that like Etika, rest in peace, was somebody who he said and did a lot of stuff that is a red flag, but was hilarious to people, and they thought it was a joke.
Yeah.
And nobody was willing to go like, hold up. Like, that's not normal,
Yeah. Especially his last couple,
last few days were.
Yeah, he was putting out a lot of warning messages, and I saw, which is something, because a lot of that same Nintendo and gaming YouTube community they were so busy and quick to make videos talking about it instead of someone reaching out to him.
Yeah,
because he had a lot of, and this is, it kind of goes back to like the whole thing, the stigma of mental health. Like, people are like, oh, that's just Etika being Etika, he's being a clown. And I'm looking at this like, I see the red flags.
He
like,
literally said the day he was going to do it, didn't he? He like tweeted out like, and people were like, it's a joke.
Yeah. But, they can make all these videos and get all the ad revenue off them now, or when it was happening, or make fun of them, talk bad about them. But it's like that situation, that to me, like, it exposed a lot of hypocrisy with a lot of people. And it's just, for me, it was so frustrating just seeing people on their moral high ground talking about, oh, he should have reached out to me, or he could have did this. I don't know why he didn't do that. I'm like, and I'm thinking to myself, like, how could he have trusted you? And if you knew him, if you were that damn close to him,
why didn't you reach out?
Yeah.
That's what we hear so much is, man, like, they should have reached out. But the whole time people are given red flags and saying something, nobody's paying attention. And, mental health issues, man, there's I feel like for me, like, I feel shame. I am in a really hard spot. I can't find words. So people like, reach out. How I'm supposed to bring myself to be like, oh man, like, let me share something with you that you could then use to, like, not to say that people will do that, but like online, especially, like, you could screenshot this, post this, do whatever you want. Like, on top of the fact that I'm just ashamed and embarrassed about it. Like, but I'm supposed to reach out, like the red, and it just, I think if somebody musters the strength to put out like a meme, like suicide joke about themselves or something, that's them like trying to get around the embarrassment, trying to get around the shame that they have, to like say something and hope that something happens or comes from it, or that somebody, and I'll always believe that as somebody who's there, like as somebody who, to this day, when I'm in a bad spot, have a really hard time vocalizing and saying like, I feel weak right now, or I am so embarrassed about my emotional state because I don't have control. you know. But everyone, it's always, thoughts and prayers after somebody passes 24 hours later, and and that was something that frustrated me so much about Etika too, is like when he passed, everyone found out, like, finally it was 24 hours, people were like RIP, but then that conversation about mental health and awareness was done. It was done. To get 24 hours. All right. Is he even in the ground yet? Probably. I don't know. I mean, in this case, obviously, but that's such a, why? Like we're, and I think Twitch like rolled out a feature the day after Etika passed or anything, and people instantly attention turned, and it was about the next thing, about rallying against Twitch about some dumb feature. And it was like, we're not going to pause on this and like talk about content creation and mental illness and talk about, like, in a lot of ways, like, I think Etika was subject to a lot of bullying that obviously we will never know. But I think in a way, obviously, he put himself out there in ways that were not conducive to like genuine conversation. But that doesn't lessen the problem. And I think that a lot of people, I still remember scrolling through like one of his last tweets and seeing like a bunch of clown emojis, and a bunch of, and I just, to me, it's like, I don't know, people don't take this stuff seriously. And I remember, one of my favorite things was like, and I don't, this is not like a cancellation thing, but I remember Tyler, the creator, put out a tweet at one point and it said like, how does internet bullying exist? Just walk away from the computer. And I still think about that tweet because I'm like, people think like that, whether he thinks like that or not, I don't know, but people think like that, right? Like the minute you walk away, it's just gone. And I think, to Etika, to your situation, to mine. And I just think that there are so many people that think that this doesn't matter, whether they're repressed or they genuinely don't have like an emotionality to them. I don't know, pretty irrelevant, but it really like saddens me to know that people believe that, they think that. So, and to I don't know. Going forward, I just try not to participate in any of that cancellation stuff. I actively try to speak against it as often as I can, because you and I, having seen the effects of it, and my partner herself having been canceled, and to this day, always kind of riding that wave of people like vehemently disliking her. It's God, the internet sucks. I love it. I love content creation, but it's really shown me a lot of human nature, I guess. I don't want to say it's human nature. I'd like to believe people are intrinsically better, but I don't know,
It's one of the things, like some of the people that are in my community, like in my Discord or come to my streams, like they've said to me that situations I've been through, or situations we collectively as a group have gone through, have shown them, the reality of content creation. It's not just making videos. It's not just streaming. Like there's so much more to it. And I'm like, yeah, it is. Like we recently had a situation where we had a content creator that was quote unquote up and coming, joined our Discord community, joined our streams, joined our stuff, and then basically came in to find out what kind of connections I had, because I work with the gaming industry, get all those connections, get the connections of the people that I had in my Discord and my streams and everything like that. And then decided to siphon them out, talk shit about me and my community to the people in the gaming industry that I'm connected to. And then just created so much chaos in my group that, right now in my Discord community, there's a lot of distrust and amongst one another, because it's like we find out that this girl, I'm just gonna say this girl because I don't want to name her, but this girl decided to come in the group. She did all that, and a lot of people we find out were invited to her Discord, invited to her private stuff. She did the same thing. Even again, my wife got dragged into it. She befriended my wife and did the same thing to my wife's community. And, it got to the point where it not only damaged reputation for me, it also damaged my wife's reputation. And then I find out that this is a pattern that this creator has done to other creators, other even prominent ones, that they've done that to them. Basically, it for me financially, I took a hit because I lost patrons. I lost YouTube channel members. I lost, people that were subs on Twitch, and this person just goes, it's like a whirlwind of chaos. And when and it's funny because like I had a lot of people. hey, I see you I see you there. But it's like I had a lot of people that had a lot of other creators that again I thought were my friend on YouTube, that I knew, and they decided to talk shit about me on Twitter, talk shit about my wife,
Right.
They don't want to tag you. But
no.
They'll allude. Like, that's true. They'll allude, they'll tiptoe around it, but it basically describe you without tagging you.
Exactly. Yeah, they paint around, they make a nice little silhouette around you, but they'll never actually and that's why it's not feedback for you. It's the sole intent purpose of hurting or tearing down. Yeah.
And it's like, and then it came to like people that I thought, like I said, I thought I was friends, I thought I was cool with, sneak dissing me on Twitter or on their streams or on YouTube videos. And then the next thing I know, then they're hitting me up like, hey man, let me come on your podcast. Hey man, I see you're writing reviews. Let me give you some tips. I'm gonna, let me help you, or all this other stuff. And I'm like,
unsolicited tips, my favorite.
Right? I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Really?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like I ain't got eyes. Like I can't go to your profile incognito and see what you're saying or whatever. Yeah.
Right. It's just.
There's a level of mental fortitude that you have to build up to be able to stay in content creation, and that's why people with mental illness, I think, like with some of the harder mental illnesses or that are hit harder with their mental, not harder, like there's a tier system of mental, but people that are affected to a greater degree by mental illness, I think have the hardest time thriving in content creation, because you're constantly, especially for like someone like me, right? Like if you're raised in a household that's like really tumultuous and you don't have a great sense of identity, or you second guess yourself a lot because your parents didn't nurture you quite enough, because these are all things that happen. You second guess people, and it's not that you assume the worst out of them. It's not like a conscious choice. It's just like conditioning, and then something happens, right? And then somebody does something scummy, and then you're like, I was kind of right. And it furthers this like this confirmation bias almost of like, I have so many friends on Twitter who did not do terrible things to me, but because like 6 did, now I'm paranoid about everybody coming through, right? It doesn't matter how many good people that came through. So there's this, it's this dichotomy of figuring out like how to function and cope. And for, I don't know, for me, and this is like way easier said than done. And like, I'm in therapy, so like, wow. But it's just about controlling what I can control. And like, I'm not going to be that dude that like hoards myself in and goes like, nah, like my community, my people, me. Like if you come through and you use me, cool. Like I know that now. And like, I have no problem warning people about you in like behind closed doors and being like, hey, just so you know, this happened to me, not even going to say anything bad, but this is the situation. Like, because if I'm just wary of everybody, I'm going to cut myself off of potentially great relationships or what, like, I maybe wouldn't have even been on this podcast if I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, he spoke to Ash and like, that's, but I just dropped a song. So maybe it's, like it's not worth it for me to always be so paranoid. But also I worked through a lot of it and I get why people are that way. I still like, there are days, and you can ask my partner, where I'm like really second guessing all of it, every single bit. So, if cancellation taught me anything, it's that like people are going to hate you. Like this is the analogy I use. If there's a dog in the road and there's just a big like moving truck, like 90 miles an hour. And for some reason, this dog can't move. That for the purposes of the analogy, a dude can like barrel roll in, scoop this puppy up and like dip, save this dog from getting splattered on the street. And somebody's going to be like, he only did that to get on the news. He only did that for publicity. Like there's always going to be somebody who doesn't, because they're mad that they didn't do it, because they're just a sad person. Like it doesn't, there's always going to be a dude like that. So whatever, like you got to live your truth, because there's always going to be somebody, generally speaking, who is in your corner. So it's just, and like I said, I struggle a lot with who's my real friend, or I haven't talked to you in 6 months, do you hate me now? But so cancellation and the mental health of like streaming it's a conversation that's in its infancy, but it is not only important, but like, can we prevent an etika? Should we? Well, yeah. Like, yes, we should, because I think our cancellations and the way that we treat other people, because we don't treat them like people, we treat them like brands, or we treat a clip that we see on Twitter and we go, that's them as a person. They're a bad person based on this. Like, we don't treat them like a person who has like nuance and life experience and like maybe a bad household or bad parents, or we just treat them like they're somebody who's making consciously terrible choices. That's it. Not as humans that make mistakes or stumble. We treat them as like, you know what you did and it was bad. And people aren't like that. But I guarantee the next time somebody's caught making a mistake, they're going to be like, no, it was a mistake. Oh my gosh. But they're going to get hit with the cancellation and they'll see the truth. But I don't know, man. It's just, we should talk about it more. And honestly, low key, high key, I don't even care actually. There's a lot of people that are like, there was somebody who DM'd my partner and said, if your boyfriend wants to talk about mental health, they should go to college and get a degree and be a therapist. And I don't need a degree to talk about this stuff. I don't need a degree to say that like what people do on a daily basis is destructive. I don't need a degree to say like that when I was 16, I put a handful of pills in my mouth and I wanted to die on my bathroom floor. Like, I don't need a degree to tell that story. And I know that story impacts somebody and they feel like, oh, like he's been there. He's 11 years later, still good. Maybe I can get there. I don't need a degree for that. Like, I don't, subtweet me, clip me on that, whatever. I don't. And, that's the point of my music, like my most recent song is about literally depression, but it's not the I'm just sad part of depression. It's the lethargy. It's the self-doubt. It's the I don't want to move part of depression. And I literally have a song on the EP that talks about social media and how destructive it is. Like, that, like, it's important that I just talk about it and we talk about it. That's it. Let's just talk about it. Like, really, not I need a mental health day, so I'm going to take a time away from stream. And then everybody going, yeah, mental health is great, until somebody's actually talking about it. No, we need something that's not just on the surface. So, yeah.
And one of the things too, like I really hate the people that trivialize mental health, those of us that struggle with it. By saying like you ever notice this, and I'm going to say this because I'm going to use this term, which I don't normally use, but I'm friends with the voice actor for Dante from Devil May Cry.
Oh yeah. Cool.
So Ruben, he likes to say this term. He say, whenever we're stepping into like hot territory, he's like, let's dip into peanut butter. I'm going to say this. I'm so fucking tired of people, and I don't care. You guys, if someone doesn't like me saying this and they want to clip it, fine.
We're just inviting the bad shit today. Like, whatever. We've been through it already, right?
Right. Like, I'm so tired of people who say something stupid on the internet and then backpedal and use mental health as a crutch to get out of it. Yeah. Trivializing things that you and I experience on a daily, and it's a thing that just upsets me is what we deal with is not easy. It's a constant battle that some days it feels like we're just losing.
Yeah.
And then you know, and for us, if we speak out about it, then people get upset. Like, oh, you shouldn't talk about it. Like I get it all the time from people like, oh, you shouldn't talk about anything negative. You shouldn't talk about this, especially when it comes to fucking Facebook. I cannot stand.
I haven't been on Facebook in years for that reason.
Yeah, it's like people tell me like my own family like, oh, I'm here for you, and I'm like, motherfucker, where you been?
Yeah, I do not know that. That is not a fact. Yeah,
right. Where you been? Like, oh, you only pop up. And that's the other thing, man. I get people that pop up only when things, go down. But when I'm, anything other than that, nope, nowhere to be found. But all of a sudden, yeah, I'm here for you. Really? Where? I'm looking. I see an empty chair.
Yeah. It's so hard because I've tried to like broaden my scope of what I see to include my old self, because I used to be somebody who did have like a lot of mental health issues, but they were so unaddressed that I would do bad shit. I would put holes in walls out of anxiety or anger, and then it could look like backpedaling, and it could look like I'm like just like scapegoating mental health, right? And that's because of a shame, a lack of like, awareness, or just the fact that like I don't want to get help, right? So I always try to like, I see the frustration when people are like, it feels like they're using mental illness. My only thing about that, and I don't even hate when people do that. If you do have a mental illness, like, and you find that you're consistently bringing it up as an excuse or as a reason to explain behavior, I think that you need to seek help, because I think that like mental illness for me explains a lot of my behavior, but I also know those behaviors aren't something I can keep just doing, right? Like I gotta like try to get better. And that's the thing is for me, if you're not trying to get better, that's the red flag. Whether you're doing things and then scapegoating or like whatever, but the proof is in the pudding. And if I'm not seeing like growth or like concerted effort, right? Like I went to therapy. I finally was like, sign me up, I got lucky enough that somebody paid for it because it's very expensive. So somebody else like covered me, but I started getting better, but again, I also understand flip side of the coin that like most people can't get help. It's just not an option. It's just not realistic. And so there are people that like probably were diagnosed with depression when they're 16, they're 32 now, and they have zero like way to to really get help. And so they're like, but I have depression, or I have bipolar disorder, and they do not great things to people. And I don't know. It's mental illness. The minute you throw it in a situation, I'm not going to ever be that guy that says you probably don't have a mental illness, because people said that shit to me. So I know how damaging that is. And I'm never going to like try to gatekeep and tell somebody like, well, you shouldn't use mental, like, because again, like I've been on Twitter before being like, I struggle with friendships because of my mental illness. This is not an excuse. It is, you know what I mean? Like I've gone into it. So I never want to be that guy. But I will say, like, I always encourage people, and that actually, interestingly enough, falls into the conversation of like, is somebody, there's a lot of people on the internet that say you just want attention. You just want attention. You're saying that because you want attention, right? Like, oh, I'm suicidal today. Like, oh, you just want attention. But like, is somebody who is saying outrageous things for attention somebody who is mentally sound or nurtured in a way that like makes any sense? Because I'll tell you the answer is no. Like if somebody is saying outrageously heinous things like I'm going to kill myself or whatever, and you think it's just for attention and say it is just for attention, there is an underlying problem emotionally that they are not working through. So that's my thing, is like when people dismiss people saying stuff because it's just for attention. I mean, it might be for attention because they don't know how to say that they're struggling. That's the point, right? Like we should stop telling people they do or don't have mental illness because we don't know. Because the sad fact is that it's not treated like a serious thing in most of the world. Even Canada, you go to Norway, like all these places with socialized healthcare, if you sign up for therapy, you're on a wait list for months. You're not getting rolled through these systems very well. So we got to stop telling people that they do or they don't have it or what, like, that's the damaging part, you know, whether somebody's using it as an excuse or scapegoating it. Hey, what I went through is my pure experience on my own. I'm not going to tell somebody they don't have something. I will try my best to refer somebody to sources that are going to help them work through that. But, and this isn't to try to be contrary to what you said, because I used to think that, where I'm like, you know, I'm tired of people using my struggles as a means to hide behind bad behavior. But honestly, I had mental illness. I have mental illness. I did a lot of bad things, and I blamed it on my illness. It wasn't good, obviously, right? But I got better, and I live with that. I live with that shit every day. I don't feel good about it. That's a level of guilt that I don't think that I'll ever get rid of. All the things that I did, the bridges I burned, the people I hurt and yelled at, or the things, you know, but I'm better. So, you know, I think that's the most important thing, is we foster a place where even if somebody is lying, joking, using it as a scapegoat, I can't take the risk. I can't take the risk of them being somebody who truly needs help or truly needs a voice. You know, that and even in like Dead by Daylight or video games I play, when somebody is like, man, like F you, and I hope you burn in hell, I'm like, hey man, like, I hope you start feeling better today. Cause like, that dude could have a terrible home life or a dad that abuses him or whatever. So I'm going to like try to give them something so that they maybe cling to that. I don't know. So, but it's hard. It's hard to do that because it takes so much patience with people that genuinely don't deserve it, but like people that it's hard to be patient with, right? Somebody comes at you sideways about something, or you see something that looks like at first glance, you're like, that's a little scummy looking. It's hard to want to like second guess that initial impression, but, and I don't do it. I don't do the best job all the time, but I think we should always just be more patient with everybody, because we don't know if they do or don't have problems that we don't see. So
no, you're correct. You're correct in that. You know, and with the stigma of, I'm glad we're having this conversation. I really am.
It's a good conversation. I don't get to have this conversation very often. I'll be real. Like I hear it in my chat, but I'm always the one like initiating the conversation. It's different to have a back and forth. Yeah.
You know, one of the things like you know, I think we need to, you know, as humans, I'm just gonna say humans as society, like with removing the stigma, like it needs to be discussed. Like for me, I'm Polynesian as well as Black and Italian, and you know, I grew up originally Western Samoa, but then I came to America when I was 7. And grew up in a predominantly ghetto environment. I'll just say that. Yeah. Very ghetto. People die every day. You know, shootings and shit happen all the time.
Right.
And it's like dealing with, you know, being abused growing up and different stuff like that happened, that my dad allowed happen to me and my siblings to make a man out of us. Like
the pressure of what a man is.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I'm gonna like, I don't even think I ever shared this, but fuck it, I'm sharing. I'm an open book. It is good.
The interview went the other way.
You know, like, there's a situation like when I was 14. You know, my dad's like, oh, you know, you need to be a real man now. You know, you need to, you get rid of your vagina. You need to pop your cherry, your cherry, and put me in a position where, you know, with an older woman, you know, going through that, like, and it's like that affected me, like being essentially raped in a way.
Yeah. Forced into a sexual situation that you don't want to be a part of. Yeah. And in a lot of ways is synonymous. Yeah.
You know, and not only with, you know, I had that situation, my dad did that with one woman, and then there was a situation where it happened with the, you know, people he stayed with, and, you know, with a guy. I've been raped by a guy before, and, you know, I remember as a kid trying to speak about this. Yeah. And, you know, where I was, I guess, culturally, in the area I was at, like, you don't talk about this shit. No, you suck it up. You be a man. And realizing between that type of abuse, physical abuse that I've been through, mental and verbal abuse, like in my 20s, like I tell stories all the time. Like, in my 20s, I did a lot of wild shit. I had a lot of sexual escapades. I did a lot of partying. I did a lot of drinking, and people, they laugh about it because they're like, oh, this is too crazy to be believable. And I'm like, no, I did all this. And people will ask, I get asked, like, why? I'm like, because I've been through shit. Yeah. It's my way of coping.
Yep.
And I've been in therapy. I actually initially got a therapist because of, dealing with my daughter passing, but I've kept that therapist for over 10 years. Yeah. Dr. Paul Unker. He's amazing, has helped me work through so much shit in my life, and continues to help me work through it. And if not for him, and not entirely just him, but also my desire to want to better myself. Like, it's, and it is something like my wife now, same age as me. I've known her for over 10 years, and she is she's the complete opposite of me. She's a sweetheart, doesn't really curse, very, very nice. And it's the best thing that ever happened to me. And the reason I say that is because as wild and as crazy as I am, she deals with me and my bullshit.
Yeah, that's the exact same over here. Yeah. Goddamn.
It's like I've learning also to take accountability, because I think that's another thing a lot of people don't do, is they don't take accountability for their own choices. Like, learning accountability, learning how to manage and cope with my, my mental health, my depression, anxiety, and everything like that. And also dealing with my traumas have helped me move forward. But, like with all the crazy stories I tell people, they're like, oh, you did this with this person, you did that. I'm like, yeah, I did. But there's an underlying reason.
Yeah.
And people don't,
Yeah. There's man, like, if I learned anything from my own therapy, it's that, like, kind of, if I'm not, and I was never somebody, luckily, that got like super hammered or like coped with drugs or alcohol or parties or anything like that. I was somebody who coped with like people, because my dad was kind of similar in this idea of like, I need to be like his idea of a man. My dad was very much like a hunting, fishing. If he hears a car, he could tell you what engine's in that car. And I wasn't that kid, And so I grew up pretty emasculated and sort of like, my dad wished that his first son could live with us instead of me, was the general consensus that kind of, I heard my mom and him arguing, and my mom was like, he's never going to be your first son, so you need to get over that. And I was like, damn, dad don't like me much, huh? And I was like 12, so, I kind of get that idea of like being, like what is a man and stuff like that. But my path was different in a way that, like, the rest of my life for years, I kept engaging in situations, like long-term relationships that were incredibly clingy and toxic, because that was the relationship that I saw growing up. And even though it doesn't logically make sense, like, why would you put yourself in those situations? It was familiar. And, I wanted this clingy dynamic, this toxic dynamic, this back and forth that was like completely unhealthy, no matter who I was with at the time, was, it was lots of fights and arguments and stuff like that, but that made me feel important, and it made me, there was some emotionality there. And again, that's what I saw my parents emulate growing up. So my coping tool was people, and really clinging to people growing up, and finding validation in who I'm around or who I'm with, or and that's been a hard thing. But like, our traumas as kids, we oftentimes put ourselves in very similar situations because it's like familiar, even though it's not like good for us, it's comfortable. I don't know. That's what my therapist says anyway, not a doctor or anything. But so for me, yeah, that's 100% what it was. Yeah.
Have you found, because, I know, with your EP on the way and music your single drop. Have you found music to be therapeutic for you?
Yeah, almost like, man, it's therapeutic, but it drives me insane. There's like a paranoia that comes with it. Cause like what I want to write about, I don't know. There's this thing like, cause hip hop is not this like deep, like place to exist when it comes to like lyrics and emotions. Like there are artists, you know, like a good example is like NF and like Chance the Rapper, right? Like they both dropped albums within a relative period of time, and NF outsells Chance. But because it's like mental health and like maybe it's because he's a white rapper, but like people don't really talk about it. The buzz is mostly Chance, right? So like in hip hop, it's like I'm like, oh, do I write these lyrics or do I write this? Is this too corny? Is this like too emotional? You know, and now I got to write a hook that is like, you know, catchy enough that it's not too complex. Like it's cathartic for me once it's out. And once people listen to it and once people go, I feel that. Like, that's the thing for me that matters like so much. Writing it and putting my experience into it is wonderful, but it's like, it's probably the most like compromising thing to do as well. I think it is like cathartic. I do find a lot of like good in it. But the real good is when people listen to it and identify with it. That is my favorite part of any of it. Yeah. And as I'm writing a song, actually, hopefully today I get to actually writing it. I have the beat and everything and all that like finished up, but it's a song called I Love You, I Hate You, which is like, sounds really intense, but it, you know, I have to ride the line of like intensity and also fitting into the genre, a little bit. And, but that song is very much my relationship with people and bad relationships, like kind of what we just talked about. So it's very cathartic because there's so much of me in my music. It's not this I'm not that guy, like I'm not Roddy Ricch, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm not making like bops that are just, you know, summertime jams. I can't, almost. I feel guilty about it. And I'm not saying his music's bad. It's just my stuff is a whole different level. And so for me, that catharsis is like one of the biggest payoffs.
Yeah. And, you know, that's the other thing too, like, you know, switching gears to music. Like, I mean, I have a background in music too. I used to be very active in music. I've been signed to Virgin Records before. I've sung, you know, I'm a singer, or was. I had a bad experience being signed because, you know, when I signed a Virgin Record, they're like, oh yeah, we love your voice and this and this, and then you know,
they tell you what to make and what to do and
what to make, who to sing. Oh, this is your look. And then I didn't have the look of a singer, even though like I can sing R&B. I like rock. I like all music, you know, but I didn't have the look. So I had to be a ghost singer, ghost writer.
That would drive me nuts. Yeah. I see. I couldn't do that.
You
like,
know,
if I make it, I want to be the one putting it out there. Yeah. That would drive me crazy. I don't blame you.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, people think when it comes to the music industry, it's about music. And it's like, if it's just you, maybe.
Yeah.
If you're signed, like the big thing before is getting signed. And I tell a lot of people, there's a lot of people here in Hawaii that are, you know, the big music in Hawaii is, they call it Hawaiian because it's Hawaiian variation of Jamaican reggae music.
Oh, okay.
And so you have a lot of people that are trying to be the next J Boog and all these other, you know, Ziggy Marley. They're trying to do that because
trying to emulate that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, my thing is like, if you're going to do music, the whole point of music is expressing yourself and having your own sound. And everyone's, or the other thing, people trying to be the next Bruno Mars or whatever. And I'm like, just do you. Like I would, you know, the last time I did anything, I dropped a EP, I want to say 2015. I haven't touched music really since. I mean, I'll occasionally do covers, but I dropped an EP in 2015, and I was just talking about terrible relationships. Like I was basically expressing myself through my music. You know, I would sing on one track, rap on the other, and then people would be like, that's too heavy. That's too deep.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I'm talking about real shit.
Yeah. Music for so many is like an escape. And so to have like a real shit track or focus, a lot of people are like, nah, no, that scares me. I'm gonna go this way. Yeah. Yeah. But there's a lot of people, what I see lately, which is like fascinating. I think if I had to guess in the past 5 years, is this crossover from kids that grew up in like the metal scene, which is like nothing but emotionality and vulnerability. You know what I mean? Like, people say what you want about metal, but if you look at metal lyrics, so much of it is like these heavy metaphorical analogies about, you know, just pure emotion. But I see a lot of these people kind of finding their tethers in hip hop with, you know, artists that are maybe not as well known, like Whit Lowry, NF. You have a lot of other artists talking about this kind of stuff as well. If you think about, like, in a way, Post Malone dabbles in like some of that very lightly and some of his very, very early stuff. And with like Paranoid is like a great example. But so I think there's like this kind of weird blending coming out where it's becoming more acceptable to talk about this stuff. And you have like people like 21 Savage, I think it's 21 Savage, talking about, you know, therapy, and maybe hip hop's coming around. It's not happened very fast, but, you know, I think we're seeing this era of like people engaging with heavy stuff as catharsis. Or, you know, in my opinion, the heaviest tracks are giving words to emotions that people don't know how to express. So they're feeling things and they're finally hearing the words that are like, oh my God, yes. Like, I didn't even know how to say this, but this song gets it. It's not prevalent yet, but it's, heavy stuff is not people's favorite, especially in like hip hop. I feel like even in R&B is like love songs and like maybe others. I don't listen to a lot of R&B, but it doesn't feel like you would ever talk about, you know, I mean, like Bad Relationships fit into that, but like if we're talking like, you know, bad relationships, like deeper than surface level. Yeah, they ain't trying to hear that. That stuff hits home. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
What? I'm trying to have a good time and go fuck. No, I don't want to hear that shit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, and that's the thing with me writing music is like I'm always like, is this too heavy? Like, is this too much? And I'm that guy. I like poetry and I like metaphors and analogies. And I'll read some lyrics to my partner, and she's like, "Do you think people will get that? That's pretty complicated." I'm like, "Oh, there's like too many analogies, or it's not like." Sometimes I'm like, "Is it not dumb enough?" Like, not that like is an indication of where rap is, but like, do I need to like just make it, you know, fewer words, you know? But and you know, I take a lot of inspiration from like Mac Miller, J. Cole, Kendrick, like these lyrical rappers that are capable of lyricism at like the highest level, but somehow have put this blend of like simplicity on it so that like if you think deeper, you'll see it. But if you don't, it's still a bop. Like trying to find that middle ground. So yeah.
You ever notice too, like how a lot of people, they listen to music, or if you listen to like how music has changed in like the last 10 years, 15, 20 years, like it's almost like, I hate saying it because I sound like the old man is saying, "Get off my yawn, my yard." Anyway, I've noticed, and maybe it's because of my background in music, I feel like a lot, like if I cut on the radio, I'm like, this shit is fucking crazy.
Yeah. What was there's a new song that came out called Gooba. And I was like, I listened to that and I was like, I don't get it. I don't understand, you know, like I feel like the old person that's just like, kids, like, get out of here. Like, but I genuinely am like, you know, but one thing I'm realizing is that people barely listen to the words more than just being able to be like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, so it's all that. Yeah, so, but also like, I also know I'm not catering to that audience. That's not my audience. Like, I'm trying to find the audience that is doing something or wanting something. Like a lot of people that listen to my music they have literally said, I actually don't listen to hip hop much, but like your stuff has like a lot of meaning. And so I love that, which means that they haven't found hip hop that has had those kinds of lyrics before, which means that like, in a way I could be a gateway to them, like finding Kendrick or Mac or whoever. Right. You know, but So, but also knowing that I don't cater to the, Tekashi listeners of the world or to the Lil Durk listeners of the world. Like, not for me. I'm good. I know where my subsection is.
Yeah.
Because some of that stuff I'm just like, okay, just that's all I got. Yeah, like people like music for a reason. So I'm not going to sit here and say like that's trash music, but I listen to it and I'm like unentertained the entire way, so yeah. But yeah.
No, and it's like one of my friends, he's a rapper who goes by Futuristic. He's becoming mainstream, but his stuff was so good because he's kind of a speed rapper, but his content, he talks about stuff like the addiction to social media, like the addiction to drama. Like he talks about willing yourself to keep going despite, like, he had a song called Just Do It. How people say, oh, growing up people said I'm never gonna be anything. And then he recently did a track, I want to say a year ago, that damn near got him canceled because he was taking shots at Tekashi and other rappers where they were glorifying like the drug culture and all this other stuff. And he's like, that's not a good role model for kids. Like, what are you doing? These kids look up to us. Like, and people were going at him like, that's not the wave, don't do that, blah, blah. And I'm like,
that sucks. That sucks that you can't be like, I don't believe in this. And yeah, that reminds me of Cole, when Cole put out man, I can't even remember the track because it's not like one of my favorite tracks, but he put out I gotta find it. Hold on, we're gonna find
Go for it.
I gotta find it because I want to reference it. But Cole puts out this track, and it was a little while ago, but he talks about like mumble rap and the way that rap has kind of developed into like this weird people, and idolatry and like putting people on pedestals and talking about like just the way that all that stuff has gone with hip hop in a weird way, where like it happens, I think, in a lot of genres, but in hip hop, I think, and I'm the outside looking in, so I'm going to get in trouble for saying any of this. Like people in hip hop are, or rappers are people that usually come from nothing and like crush it. That's usually how it goes, right? So for a lot of people, they really look up to people that make it, right? Whether it's Kanye or whether it is like Tekashi or whatever. And so I think sometimes there's like this idolatry. I want to be just like them so I can make it too, or so I can get there. So the examples that they set, I feel like people want to walk that path even closer than somebody who likes Lady Gaga or whatever, So it is scarier in my opinion. Let me see here. I'm trying to find this track. It was, I thought it was on Born Sinner, but I don't remember.
Was it Born Sinner or Forest Hill Drives?
I thought it was on Born Sinner. Maybe it was Forest Hill.
I feel like a lot of people sleep on Cole.
Too many people. Yo, Cole. I always get in this fight. People sleep on Cole way too much, man. Like I look at like just his Spotify monthly listeners, and I'm like, I mean, he's got 20 million listeners. Like that's nothing to like sleep on. But like there are other artists that like, I don't know. People say Cole's overrated. And I'm just like, man, lyrically, no. Like I don't even know how this is a conversation. But I get how he's not for everybody. It drives me nuts. Hold on. I gotta find this, man. It's gonna drive me nuts.
Oh, go for it.
Let's see here. I thought it was Born. I mean, I swear it's Born Sinner. Let's see here. Land of the Snakes is really good. Maybe it was. Oh no, it was KOD. It was way more recent, wasn't it?
Was it?
thought it was KOD. 1985.
Okay.
That's what it was. 1985 was the track. 1985 was a track that like talked about just, I don't know. To me, it was talking about how hip hop's changed and like his thoughts and opinions on it. But the thing about Cole is you can't cancel him at this point. Like he's way too far ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the people he was aiming at were like lower, or they weren't going to be able to punch up at him and stuff like that. But yeah, like that was the song I remember he got interviewed for, and people were like, yo, 1985 is like really good, and you're talking about hip hop these days and like how it's changed. And yeah, super good. That track, if you guys listen to any J. Cole track ever, listen to 1985. It's just a good storytelling song about somebody's thoughts and opinions on the way the world is right now, especially like his world, right? Hip hop. Mm-hmm. So good.
Okay. Being completely respectful of your time. I know we went a little over.
Yeah, we went. Yeah, it's been fun. So yeah, I'm not too stressed.
So speaking about music, you got your EP coming up. You want to talk about it? Like,
I can kind of talk about it. I mean, like, so much of it is like hard to, so I mean, it's an EP, so it kind of has like a concept around it. It's very mellowed out, it's ukuleles and piano chords, and it's nothing too crazy. There's like the stuff I put out so far. So Confessional is my very first track ever, and I went in, and that's going to be on the EP. It's also out as my first single, but Confessional was a song where it doesn't have a chorus. I went in and I was like, I want to just, I hate saying this, spit. I want to just get in there. And I wrote all these lyrics, but it comes out swinging. It talks so much about like, it's just me bearing my soul and being like, this is who I am. Like, this is, I struggle with mental illness. I struggle with relationships. Me and my family don't get along, like it just talks about everything. And it's such a good introduction to the whole EP, because if you can get through that and you appreciate it, even if you don't like it as a song, if you can appreciate the words in it, you'll like something else on the EP 100%. But yeah, we have a few songs. Like I said, I'm aiming for 6 right now. It's pretty standard EP size. But it's got a few like slower kind of jams on it, if you will. It's not like this full, it's not hip hop as you would know hip hop today, of course. If we think back to like Mac Miller's most recent album, rest in peace, his most recent album that he just put out, or that his family put out on his behalf, some of it has a lot of pull from that, of like jazzy, bluesy singing. And then there's, like I said, the last 3 tracks we're working on are hip hop tracks with still a lot of intent, a lot of emotionality, but meant to be more something that you could find on TikTok, potentially something that you could hear elsewhere. And if you listen deeper, you'll get the lyrics. But it's still very much about, I'll never be that guy that writes lyrics that don't have some intentionality, some meaning, some, catharsis to it. So but yeah, the July 1st is the date we're aiming for right now, to release that. It's going to be free. It's going to be on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Play. We are going to be selling it though, which if you guys like follow on Twitter or something like that, you'll see when I start promoting it. But we're going to sell it for about $15, and I believe we're going to do 30% of the profit is going to go to mental health organization charities. So $5 for every 15 is going to go elsewhere. We have like American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, Heart Support, all these wonderful, organizations. And that's going to be what I would like to do is in perpetuity, every month, whatever we sell, we send, because, this is something that I'm really passionate about doing, really, for every album, if I can. Logistically going to look into, being sure that there's nothing weird that can happen there. But yeah, so but I'm passionate about it. I'm excited. Like I said, very inspired by, Cole, Kendrick, Miller, just lyricism, and doing, I can't say, it's hard to say that I'm doing stuff different. I think every rapper says they're doing it different, whatever that means. Right. But I think I'm doing what
you're legitimately doing it.
Yeah. I'm doing what I really want to do, and what I know isn't inherently popular. Luckily, I have a following on Twitter and Twitch that are excited about it. We have like almost 4,000 plays total on 2 singles. So that's, to me, an exciting place to start. So
4,000 on the way to 4 million.
On the way to 4 million, yeah.
There you go.
Music right now, it's great because while I'm streaming, music is this thing that I'm working on in the background a little bit, and it revitalizes me to Twitch stream and work on video games and stuff like that. But then like go make music, which is this whole different energy and bounce back and forth it's just been great. So yeah, I don't have any intentions to stop. So 4 million someday. Yeah, we're gonna get there.
Okay. Have you ever noticed okay, so you notice the trend, especially in our current culture, is you go to school, get a good education, get a good job, and then boom, that's your life. Yeah. And people are fine with you being miserable, but the minute you decide you want to go and pursue something you want to do, something you're passionate about,
it's not normal. So you get like some backlash, right? Like, you're supposed to go to college. I dropped out of college. I'm not going to be the first person to admit I dropped out of college. Yeah, that trend is still heavy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I tell people, like I've told my nieces and nephews that are in college right now, I've got 3 that are in college, 4 that are considering it. Mm-hmm. And I keep telling them, like, look, I went through it. I got a degree in marketing. Mm-hmm. I'm not kind of using it, but it's like one of those things where it's like, is it worth going and getting all that debt? When that's the thing. Like one of the things, like I forgot who it was I did an interview with, and one of the things that they said was, you don't realize at 18, 19, 20 how young you really are. Like it's very imperative, like get out, travel, go do a trade, get a skill, see the world, experience life. And then if you decide, hey, I want to get a degree, go for it then. Mm-hmm. But the transition of high school to college, I wasn't ready. Right. And I don't think it's for everyone. And I don't think this idea that a lot of people have that it's the key to success is true.
Mm-mm. No. I mean, especially with like our job market's kind of failing right now, right? Like the US anyway. Yeah, I agree. I mean, like I went to school for graphic design initially. I was like, okay, let's do this, and I went in, and I had been obviously doing YouTube work for a while. So I got very good at like graphic design stuff just through learning on YouTube. So I go into my first class for graphic design, and I was leagues ahead of everybody who was in that class. And I was like, it was a wake-up call of like, wow, to be good at this and to like flourish, you have to have a vision and you have to have some training, but the knowledge is out there. Like you can go learn stuff on YouTube, on the internet. So I switched to like a business major for a while, and I was like, I don't want to do any of this. So I dropped out, I think 2 semesters in. But that's my thing. Like, I think if you go into IT, get your certifications, right? Like there are so many A+ certifications you can get, networking certifications. Those are way more important than a lot of, there are going to be some places that do require you have a bachelor's degree in XYZ, right? I think depending on the field, obviously everyone's situation and scenario is different, but be careful with college, man. Yeah, because like right now the cost for college is never been higher. I don't think anyway. It's not going down, but the propensity for you to get a job is going lower, right? Like as the market keeps churning out students that have degrees that they can't use, the markets are filled. Like starting a business is almost way better and more fulfilling than getting a job with a degree. But everyone's situation is different. I think college is generally something that it's kind of a waste of time for a lot of people, and that debt looms over you for 20 years. So whatever. What do I know? But I think that at the end of the day, like and even for art students, right, I think you can go to college and learn how to do art stuff better. I think you could, but I think, do you need to? No, I don't think so. I think like a lot of arts things don't, now again, like classically trained singing, and there are nuanced, different options and stuff. But I think generally speaking, like a lot of stuff you can just hire someone, hire a tutor. You could figure it out, without, $100,000 a year being socked on you. So.
All right. We got a couple questions from the chat. Magetsu Gaming asked, do you think there are agendas in music?
Yes. Oh yeah. I mean, 100%. Like we see, that's why you see artists that like get popular. Their song gets popular on TikTok and they get signed. They have one song and they're signed, and it's not because they're great at like music or their message is really heavy hitting. It's because they can sell. And they, after they've blown up and had 4 million plays on TikTok or whatever, and their Spotify blows up, it's easy for them to get signed. And then a record label is like, hey, all right, this is the person who made this popular TikTok and they have this next album coming out, and it just sells because, right? Like it's a lot of it is still just like purely like ingrained in monetary successes and advancements. And if you follow the story of somebody like Chance the Rapper, who really didn't ever sign like a full on record label deal and was independent and still independent, right? Like you'll see how many people fought against him in the industry and did not want him to succeed. So, I mean, the agenda is sales and money. And will that ever change? No, I mean, no, not at all, for sure. But and that's why, trends are important. People can be mad at Drake, whatever. He made a song for TikTok recently, but like it works. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's the agenda is doing what works and to some degree following trends. You can say that like, there were a lot of people that were like, as an artist, you should set the trends. But it's like, no, not always, because you can try that. But then if it bombs, you look like an idiot. People stop working with you. You lose a lot. And there's a lot of people that are saying these kinds of things that don't take risks. So until you're out there taking risks too, you can't tell other people to take risks. Right. So, yeah, I mean, the agenda, is it hidden? Nah, it's mostly like, in my opinion, it's just perpetuating the status quo of like what is like hot at the moment until the next thing is like hot, really. Yeah.
Okay. We have a question from Rogue Dragon. He says, what single social change do you both think would be the most to improve mental health treatment and improve attitudes about it? That's loaded. That's a loaded question, Rogue.
I don't know. I really don't know. I think talking about it isn't even enough anymore. I mean, like, if people like Lizzo, who literally just a big girl who likes to make music, right, and is proud of herself, can get bullied off of Twitter, I don't know, man. Like, people that don't even, it's a good question. I don't think there's anything socially that we can do besides like perpetuating the idea that it's more acceptable with each generation, right? Because if we think about mental health conversation, it's in its infancy, right? Like we've been talking about it for 10 years, maybe. Like 2000, turn of the millennium is when we started seeing people start taking it seriously. And by seriously, I mean like some insurances cover some stuff now. But I mean, as a society, we still struggle with like, treating people that have hidden illnesses appropriately. A friend of mine has fibromyalgia, which is like a huge problem. She's in constant pain, all day, but it doesn't have any like outward symptoms. So she gets, and that's a physical illness that she experiences. So we have years. And I don't think that in my lifetime, we really solved this problem, because as I've learned, there will always be people that don't believe in mental illness because, there's no way that somebody could be suffering. They have a roof over their head, they have food on their table, so they can't be struggling. Like that idea, once we kind of annex some of these old generation ideas, I think things get easier. But I don't know that we as a people can make like a huge change. I think just discussion is great, but there will always be pushback on discussion because there will always be opposing ideas. So I don't know. I don't have a great answer, but that's my thoughts on it. I think it just like, my dad didn't teach me emotionality. My parents didn't care. So I'm going to teach my daughter emotionality. I'm going to teach her from an early age. She's 4. So when she throws a tantrum, we don't spank her or, anything like that. I sit down and I go like, hey, what's going on? Why are you frustrated? Like, let's talk about it. And hopefully that, she teaches it to her kids or whatever. And I think that's the best thing we can do, is be willing to have those conversations, because those formative years, I think, they can really set the tone for the rest of somebody's life. But I don't know. What about you? Yeah.
It's one of those questions. It's like, I mean, I'm with you. I don't think we're gonna, in our lifetime. No, I don't think we're gonna. We may get closer, but
I think we get closer.
I think with the whole problem we're having now with cancellation, I think we got to address that alongside mental health, because if there's so much that's just tiered on top of each other, and with people uncomfortable talking about mental health, and then if you share an opinion, people want to cancel you because it's not the right opinion to have, and it's just.
But that's the problem, is I think the issue lies in just the fact that people are different, but they don't accept the differences.
Yeah.
And how do you fix that? Like, can you, like, the only thing you can do is like teach patience, I guess.
Yeah.
And again, that's, why I live by example with patience, but what else do you do,
Yeah. It makes me think of that situation where Gothix was talking about the racism that she's experienced, from said community, and I commented on that, and I said, I've experienced that both from that community and from Polynesian as well, because, but the narrative is, oh, racism is only from white people. Like, no,
it can only come white people can be racist. Like,
it's like,
I literally asked that question in that thread too, because I was like, I don't know, because like I'm a white guy outside looking in, but like, is that internally to other members of a POC community considered racism, or is it just like a prejudice? Or, I mean, that's not a good thing either, but what is that? And I agree with you there.
Yeah. It's like, I think, I don't know. Like I literally said, I've tried to talk about this with my wife before, like, what are ways that we, as society, both as a society and as an individual, we can address so many social issues, from mental health to stigma around it to, I mean, because I don't know. I think, and I'm gonna say this is stepping in the, I'm dipping in the peanut butter. I'm gonna say that. My experiences with, being in the Black community, being in the Polynesian community, there is a idea, and it's largely shared, and it's weird, it's so largely shared, that mental health is a white person problem. And hey, people want to clip it and come at me, fine, I got broad shoulders. But I'm speaking on what I've seen over my last 30 something plus years. Things I've grown up with, where it's taboo to talk about mental health. It's taboo to, not only mental health, but to talk about racism within groups, POC groups. It's like, no, that's colorism. No, fuck it, it's racism. You can't talk about, feeling depressed, or like, oh, that's a white person thing. No, it's not. We need to address that in these communities. Like, I understand. Okay, further in the peanut butter. I understand the idea of, and I think this is a problem that we're getting into now. Fuck it, I'm all the way in the peanut butter. I feel like, as much as we're embracing diversity, which is great, I also feel like there is an extreme of that that's pushing segregation.
Yeah.
And I think, and I'm seeing a lot of it. Some people say, "Oh, it's casual racism," or it's casual, this. This is only an issue that this group has. And I'm like, we need to address why that's wrong. We need to address that mental health can affect anybody. It could be a chemical imbalance. It could be trauma related. It could be whatever. But we need to have, and I'm not a fan of saying safe spaces, but we need to have spaces openly, where we can talk about these problems and not be judged and not be shamed or canceled, because they're real fucking problems that you and I deal with daily. And yeah, it's
I mean, like, talking about being in the peanut butter, I'm a white dude talking about this, so I'm opening myself up. But yeah, I mean, like, there's something to be said about the effect that like systemic oppression has on like POC communities and cultures, and how POC cultures and communities have had to rise to the challenge and be like tougher for it, this is just off the head here. I could be wrong about this, but with the rise of being like tougher, or like kind of the way you grew up with like your dad or whatever, right? Like, what happens is when you become tougher is you become repressed, and you just pretend that mental health is a white person issue is to say that you're above it and that it's not a human issue, right? Like and statistically speaking, white males have like a relatively high suicide rate. LGBTQ individuals have really high suicide rate. So do people in other communities, Black, Latino, those are still extraordinarily high. And I think a lot of it is because of masculine repression, because in those communities, there's still this very cultural, and I think in a weird way, white people don't have this like culture that they kind of live in. So they're talking about it. I don't know. But like when you're, a Hispanic individual, I have a few Hispanic friends, they say their dads literally don't believe in that. Like, it's not an issue. Again, like, it's a white person problem, right? And so they perpetuate that, their kids perpetuate it, and it keeps going, right? So it takes like a generation to like break break into the conversation, kind of like what you're doing here, right? And decide to say like, no, like, we can't just keep doing the same thing. That's not how this works, So I don't know. It's interesting, to talk about that, because I think that in a weird way, a lot of cultures fighting racism, like I said, it has caused them to racism and the effects of racism on an individual who is a POC, right, intrinsically has mental health consequences, right? If you experience systemic racism, whatever, racism from your neighbors, from the cops, like whatever it might be, that has an effect on your mental health. And to not see the line or the parallel there is crazy to me. But again, I don't live in the world. I live on the outside. All I can say is my observations. But there's no way you can say that the paranoia you experience walking down the street or people yelling slurs at you doesn't affect the way you feel about your life and yourself. That is a mental health issue. Racism is a mental health issue. And so to say racism or to say mental health is a white person problem, like, it's a problem that's afflicted upon you and you don't deserve it, but it's something that like should still be talked about. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
And not only that, like, yeah, it really is, and I've had other situations too. Like, I've had situations with, other POC people that have this mentality of, and I'm someone who, I get in a lot of trouble for saying this, but I'm like, I'm very much into accountability. Like, I don't believe in this idea that because of my skin color, I have it harder. Like, I've grown up, like I said, I'm mixed Black and Polynesian. I grew up in a Black neighborhood. I grew up in poverty. I grew up where, gunshots and turn on the news, 5, 6, 7, 15 people dying a day. I grew up with that. And I didn't let my environment dictate who I was going to be. And I've seen it. Like, I've been through some shit,
Right.
but I make the active choice. I'm not a victim. I'll rise above this. And I understand everyone doesn't do that. Maybe people have varying, they're very many variables. Right. But I refuse to believe that because I'm black or whatever, that I can't do what white people can do. And I refuse that ideology. And there's a lot of inclusive, again, in the peanut butter, inclusive groups, POC groups that have said to me that, I need to fall in line with the ideology that they have. And I'm like, no, I'm an individual. This is my experience. You may have a different one, and I'm not going to invalidate that. But,
inclusivity and diversity have to be embraced together, or else inclusivity becomes a cult.
Yeah.
And like, I understand, like, I always think about this, right? Because I used to live in St. Louis, which, if you keep up, I was in St. Louis when Ferguson went down and all that stuff happened. And we literally, like, all my friends went to our house because we were like, this is crazy. But I was arrested once for having my license plates were expired. They had a warrant out for my arrest, and I didn't even realize it. So this is something I always remember. The cop just cuffed me and put me in the front seat. And like, that was it. He was just like, hey man, they want you, we'll take you in, and we'll process you. No big deal. So he takes me in and like, I know that for me, like, because I'm white, it was the simplest process. I was not in any danger. I got to sit in the fucking front seat of a cop car. You know what I mean? So I think, like, I get your mentality, and if I'm misinterpreting, let me know. But you're saying you're not, like, you don't want to be limited by the color of your skin. But I do think that, like, the world makes it harder on you because of the color of your skin, because, like, I think you're treated differently by so many people. But I don't think that, like, you're limited in your capability. But I think personally, I think that you have to push through more. Not that it's fair, but I think that, like, that sucks. But that's just my thoughts. But I also can see that, like, we don't have to think the same on it. But I know that, like, in a lot of ways in St. Louis, a lot of people that are not white do not get the treatment that I got. And so I think that, I don't know, this is like a conversation I never have with anybody live anywhere, because white person talking about this stuff gets in trouble. But
I agree. Yeah. And I think in many instances too, I think media plays a large factor in it, because if you're only portraying, to speak to, there is a difference in how people are treated based on their skin color. And I'm not going to be ignorant to that. But I also think media plays a part in it by only portraying the violent, the aggressive, the worst.
It's the vocal minority, right?
Yeah.
Like, but also I don't know, it's hard, because I hate calling it that, because it's, if somebody loses their husband, their brother, their whatever, who was doing nothing and got shot by a cop or something, like, they deserve to be vocal, and, like, that's a travesty. So there's a dichotomy, but there are plenty of cases where these things don't happen. It doesn't nullify the cases that do happen, and people should speak out against this, as a whole. But there are, so there's both.
Yeah, no, it is. And it's like, and I can speak to, like, being out here in Hawaii. A lot of people don't realize is predominantly Asian. Everyone else is a minority here. And for me, being in, going into IT, I was treated differently, mainly because, I look black, and the idea is you're going into IT.
Yeah.
Like, and so I'm treated, and there are certain ways that I respond to things, like, if a person speaks to me a certain way, I have a certain sternness in my voice, and that's treated as an act of hostility. And I'm like, an aggression. I'm like, I'm not going to hurt you, but you're not going to speak to me. You know, it's
their preconceived idea of like, you know, stereotype or whatever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in that sense, like I do agree with you. Like that is, and this is an issue that, you know, I do feel like the media
makes internalized racism a bigger issue.
Yeah. You know, because if you're only showing that type of, you know,
and if like television and like shows act that way, right, then it like makes it normal, right? It's you know, I've had a lot of friends that get told they talk white or they act white because they like anime or whatever. Or like, you're so articulate, and it's like, that's the most racist shit I've ever heard that you could say to somebody. Like, they have to sound a certain way. And that's almost one of the things with Gothics and her cancellation that was wild to me, is like, racism sucks, so why would you tell somebody that they that whole thing blew my mind. So
but it's an unwritten rule where we're not supposed to talk about it.
Apparently,
I've gone through it so much because they're like, oh, why are you talking like a white person? Why are you so articulate?
Yeah.
You know, why are you using them fancy words? I'm like, I'm not. I'm using English.
I'm just talking. Yeah.
It's not even my fucking native language.
Language. Yeah.
But it's crazy.
It's a mixed bag. Anyway, I think this spun off of the question about societal differences, but that was a good question. Yeah. If a question can make the host and the co-host rant for 10 minutes, I think that's a good question. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So being respectful of your time, though, is there anything you'd want to leave the audience with before we go?
I don't know, man. Like, the only thing I always encourage people to do with Twitter, because I always just talk about social media, because we're all on it. It's not going to stop. But like, don't believe everything you read the minute you read it. There's always a second half to a story. There's always something you don't see, and that people are more complicated than a situation that they're in. And if you've been in a situation where you're like, come on, like, there's more to it, just like, man, just think before you speak. Don't participate in cancel culture, man. Like, you're nobody's judge or jury. Like, I always say, vote with your wallet, right? If you don't like something that somebody did, or you don't like a company, just don't buy their stuff. Like, that's it, you know? Just like, don't buy their stuff, don't support them, but like, don't attack people. That's my thing. That's like the biggest takeaway from this whole, we talked about so much stuff, but like, stop attacking people, dude. Whether it's in like an in-game chat, GTA 5 chat, like voice comms, like Twitter, like, man, knock that shit off. Grow up. But that being said, I mean, that's about it. In terms of like plugs for myself, like I said, EP coming out July 1st. It actually doesn't even have a title yet. It may not have a title. I don't know. We have artwork for it, but we ain't got a title yet, so I don't know. But and like I said, it's primarily about, you know, mental health. It's about the complex parts of mental health. It's not just, I'm sad and this sucks. It's a lot of it's like very complicated stuff. But I really I love it. I believe in it. So And then, like I said, I stream 4 days a week. So I stream Sunday and then Tuesday through Thursday. So if anybody ever wants to pop over on Twitch, we play games and chill. It's a little bit more lax. The podcast is very focused here, but it's a little bit more lax. We just like to joke around and have a good time. But if people are struggling, we always have an open forum. Somebody can come in and be like, hey, I got some shit to say. So, yeah.
And I have actually a final question. I lied.
Sure. Yeah.
Did you have fun?
Dude, I had a good time. Yeah. 2.5 hour podcast that actually didn't feel like 2.5 hours. I think you got something successful here. Sometimes I'm like looking at like the time on these things and I'm like, oh, you know, but
yeah.
It didn't feel too lengthy, so it was a good time.
Cool. All right, and with that being said, people, if you want to follow Dylan, I dropped the link to all of his social media and his EP and single on in the why am I drawing blanks? I dropped it in the chat both on Twitch and on YouTube, and it's also available in the description of this podcast on YouTube as well. With everything that's being said, with everything we've talked about from mental
Talking about
health,
some heavy ass shit. Yeah.
we were fully in the peanut butter.
Yeah.
It is, but it's not often that people are able to have these kind of discussions.
How we do it.
It is. It really is.
Yep.
I agree with Rogue. He said this was very educational and interesting.
Yeah. I appreciate that. There's too much surface level shit out there, and that's not bad. Like, I understand we want to consume stuff to get away, but sometimes I think we got to be challenged to think critically. And if I could be a part of that, hell yeah, let's go.
Definitely. And with that being said, people, if you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, it's available on so many outlets, and I'm going to be lazy and read it off because it's right below us. It's available. This episode will be available later on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and available in video format on Twitch and on YouTube. And if you want to support the podcast, we have Patreon. You enjoy the stream on Twitch, you got subs, bits, all that stuff. I'm learning all that because I'm still super new to Twitch. And on YouTube, we got subscribes and all the other stuff. But this is all entirely if you want to. Whatever you guys invest in me, I reinvest into the channel. We just hope that you enjoy content like this and real conversations. This is really what this is about. And with that being said, Dylan and I are out. We will see you guys on the next one.
Yeah.